A used car lot in Kenosha, Wisconsin. Every single car on the forecourt has been burnt to a shell, destroyed in a wave of looting and violence. Parts of this city look and feel like a war zone. The smoke of smouldering rubble and unresolved conflict still hang in the air. Also hanging in the air here in Kenosha and other places right across America is a simple question. What impact will this all have on November's election? Donald Trump clearly thinks it's going to play to his advantage. Although he says the purpose of his visit here is to thank the police and other first responders, make no mistake, this is all about campaigning. The shooting of Jacob Blake by police, the burning and looting of businesses that followed, and what prosecutors say was the murder of 2 protesters by a vigilante have left Kenosha fearful and uncertain.
It was pretty peaceful until the shooting started. We heard people screaming, I was the guy that was shooting, I was the guy that was shooting. Once he came up shooting again, once he got up, we ran back in the shop.
From his barbershop, Raymond witnessed the shooting. For him, the president and his visit are barriers to the type of change he wants to see.
He should stay in Washington and just stay away. I think it's starting to calm down here a little bit, and they should leave it alone. Yeah. Don't come here. He's an explosive character, and we don't want it picking back up.
Well, to me, it's divisive only if you let it be. It's always a great honor to have a president come visit your city, no matter what the circumstances.
Ed Hibbs is running for the state assembly in Kenosha. He thinks not only should the president visit, but that the events of the last week are pushing people towards the Republican Party.
I've been knocking doors in my own campaign, and I've been out in another area that's part of my district. It's not in Kenosha. And people there have been telling me that, yes, they're tired of what the Democrats have done. They're going to switch their votes to the Republican Party in this next election. And those are people who, on the books, are kind of middle-of-the-road voters. So I think there is a little bit of change. People are just fed up with what's been going on, and they're going to switch Republican.
That's clearly a worry for Joe Biden, out in Pennsylvania yesterday, helping deliver pizzas to firefighters. Some Democrats, in their support for the protests, have been accused of being too willing to ignore or excuse the violence.
You know me. You know my heart. You know my story, my family story. Ask yourself, do I look like a radical socialist with a soft spot for rioters? Really?
But that is exactly the charge that the president is trying to make stick. That is what his visit to Kenosha is all about.
I think a lot of people are looking at what's happening to these Democrat-run cities, and they're disgusted. They see what's going on, and they can't believe this is taking place in our country. I can't believe it either.
But will voters hear the president's message?
If you look at polling among the groups that aren't super positive about Trump, the voters that he needs to convince, they're not really being convinced on this issue. They don't think he's handled these protests well. They tend to favor Biden and think that he's the one that is more likely to bring the country together and to kind of bring the country to a point of healing.
Meanwhile, in Kenosha, at the spot where Jacob Blake was shot by police, not a protest today, but what the organizers called a community event.
Just not a rogue cop, but a systemic racism that we're talking about.
The family represented by Jacob Blake's uncle.
Can I ask you what your message is to the president coming here today?
We don't have a message for him. We have a message for everybody around the world that the divisiveness that's been in our community is over. We're bringing the black community and the African Americans to unity. Every organization, little, big, and small, will be working together to heal our community. And we're no longer going to allow police officers or anybody else to use us as fuel to do whatever they want to our children. It's 2020. That is over.
Are you worried, sir, that this will all get caught up in the campaign?
No, we're not going to allow that to be caught up in the campaign, because we got one focus, and that's justice for little Jake.
This should never happen. A thing like this should never happen. They have to call early.
Touring the burned-out businesses of Kenosha this afternoon, Mr. Trump was putting himself forward as the only man who can stop the violence, if only the Democratic mayors and governors would let him. There is another equally big section of America, though, who thinks he's responsible for fanning the flames in the first place.
David Grossman. Well, I'm joined now by Vernon Jones, a member of the Georgia House of Representatives and a former lifelong Democrat, until he endorsed President Trump earlier in the year and was one of the keynote speakers at last week's GOP convention. Good evening, Vernon Jones. Thank you very much for joining us. When you hear Donald Trump, he talked about, if he had not gone in the way he had with state troops, Kenosha would have been burnt to the ground. When you hear him saying in Portland, he cheered his own supporters streaming into the city as great patriots. This is not a sign of conciliation or indeed of lowering the temperature.
Well, first of all, let's be completely honest. Those local mayors, the local leadership, they have failed those people in those communities. They have not held these rioters and these protesters. They're not peaceful protesters. You can't say they're protesting when they're burning and they're looting and they're assaulting people.
Are you saying that's all the protesters? Because that's not what it looked like.
No, what I'm saying is, if a building is burning and cars are burning, that's not a peaceful protest. And what the media, the liberal media, tend to do is want to say these are peaceful protests. When you have people who've been shot like babies in 1-year-old New York, a 1-year-old baby girl shot in a stroller, that was not a peaceful protest. When you look at what happened in Atlanta, an 8-year-old baby girl that was shot in the car with her family, that was not a peaceful protest. When you look at what happened to me in Washington, D.C. and others who were leaving the White House from the Republican National Conventions and the President's acceptance speech, that was not peaceful protest. Those were rioters. They're professional rioters. They are coming to communities and they're destroying communities. Over 90 days of nonstop.
I hear that, but I hear that. But when you actually hear Donald Trump talking about the alleged shooter in Portland, saying he would probably have been killed if he how does he know that? That is surely fueling the flames. When he liked a tweet that said the alleged shooter in Portland was a good example of why I decided to vote for Trump. How is that a president being a commander-in-chief rather than actually just being a street fighter?
Well, let's be clear. How many lives would have been saved if Joe Biden had come out of his basement and not act like a groundhog and said, look, stop this violence now? How many lives could have been saved? How many lives could have been saved if those Democratic mayors, including the one in Portland, where they've been under siege for 90-plus days? How many buildings could have been saved? How many businesses could have been saved? How many people could have been protected?
Well, let me
How many lives could have been saved if they allowed the president to come in and provide some support to the local law enforcement, as well as those who need protection in their communities?
Sorry to interrupt, but I do want to bring now in the leading Democrat representative, Brenda Lawrence, a congresswoman from Michigan and Detroit, who is also second vice chair of the Congressional Black Caucus. Brenda Lawrence, thank you for joining us. I wonder if you heard what Vernon Jones said. And the clear thing he is saying is that all the cities where violent protests have taken place have been run by Democrats. That is a good narrative for Donald Trump, isn't it?
Well, the President of the United States is very good at smoke and mirrors. So to Mr. Jordan and to everyone, this violence is happening under the President of the United States, who is Donald Trump. And it's very easy to point your finger to others, but the accountability must rest in his hands. And then to go to a place where he did not go to Portland, but guess what? Wisconsin is a swing state. So is it to his advantage? Yes. Is his purpose to deflame and to bring people together? At any point has he said, let's sit down at the table and try to figure out what's happening in America? He has yet to acknowledge that we have systematic, systemic racism in America. Racism in America.
But Joe Biden spoke out against the violence. Of course, he condemned the violence, but he didn't name Antifa. Should he have done that?
He shouldn't. He did not name what?
Antifa.
No one has proven that Antifa is doing any of this. We have seen
but wouldn't it be a good idea to have actually said that the possibility was there, so therefore he condemned that? Would that not have gone further? And
he was responsible for the violence. He denounced it. And, you know, we have the young man who's 17 years old, who's a Trump supporter, who shot and killed 2 people in the street. And the president's response is, you know, he was defending himself. We are in America. He was walking past police. And I don't want this moment to pass. If that had been a black young man walking the street with an assault weapon around his neck, would the police have just gently driven by? We've seen a man killed who had no weapon. We've seen a man shot in his back who they said he had a knife, and he was shot 7 times in the back, and he didn't have his hands on the knife. He said the knife was in the car. So we're constantly reminded of the just disdain that we're seeing for black men in America.
So Vernon Jones, 4 years ago, Donald Trump said, when I take the oath of office next year, I will restore law and order in our country. He has signally failed to do that.
Well, let's be clear. Trayvon Martin happened under Joe Biden and Barack Obama. Mike Brown riots happened under Joe Biden and Barack Obama. So let's be clear.
But this is 4 years later. 4 years later, and that was the platform on which Donald Trump said, I will wipe out violence, I will bring law and order, and it hasn't happened. Why hasn't it happened?
Again, when a black police officer, former police chief, shot down in cold blood on the streets of St. Louis by other blacks, where was the outrage? Where were you and others protesting about what happened to innocent black life? If a black man's life matter, then why is it picking and choosing which black man's life that matters?
No, but it's not the point. Surely the point is
black lives have been shot and killed, and there's been no protest, and Black Lives Matter have been part of it, pouring fuel onto the fire.
But the point is, surely the point. No. The point is, Vernon Jones, I'm asking you is, Donald Trump made that a pledge that that's what he would do. He would bring law and order, and he's failed to do it. He is the commander-in-chief.
Donald Trump has brought law and order as much as he could. Let me tell you, at local levels, you have the police chiefs who reports to the mayors and the city council. These cities, most of them are Democrats. The president cannot come in and just run over the local police department. They have to ask him for help. So he's there wanting to help, wanting to provide help. So you can't blame that on Donald Trump. You blame that on the failed leadership of those local Democrats who are making political decisions based on public health and public safety. Now, with that being said, let's be clear. Look how many lives have been killed or lost or assaulted, how many buildings been burned, how many black businesses been burned out by these looters and these rioters. And you're right, you said it right, and the Congresswoman would not answer. Joe Biden did not denounce Antifa. Joe Biden did not denounce the far left. Joe Biden did not denounce Black Lives Matter. And they are destroying this country. And now all of a sudden...
Sorry, can I just be clear? Can I just be clear? Can I just be clear? Did you just say that actually Black Lives Matter is destroying America?
The Black Lives Matter group, if you look at what they've been doing and not showing any type of condemnation of what their members and their followers are doing, yes, they are responsible for a lot of this.
Brenda Lawrence, can I just bring in Brenda Lawrence now? Can I just bring Brenda in? Donald Trump has been to Kenosha today. Joe Biden has not been to Kenosha. Isn't that a massive tactical mistake? You know, if he wouldn't go to Kenosha, where was Kamala Harris? If he wants to be there, to be seen to be doing something about it, surely he should be on the ground. Do you wish he had gone to Kenosha?
He still has an opportunity to go there, but I want something on the record. Our president of the United States has not even acknowledged that racism is still alive in America. I don't know about Mr. Vernon's world, but in the world that I live in, we have seen systematic racism throughout my life. I don't know if Mr. Jordan lives in a different universe. The reality is you can't fix something until you acknowledge it. until you acknowledge that we have a problem in America. You want to identify Black lives as a problem, but I will tell you, if it's Black lives, if it's racism, until we stop this finger pointing and walking around in a disconnected reality and get down to, because we need to stop this. And Donald Trump does not want to stop it. He wants to take a photo op and say, I'm stopping, I'm the law and order president, and if you reelect me, this won't happen. But why would anyone buy that? Because it's happening on his watch now. I was a Democratic mayor, and I can tell you for a fact, I supported my police. I ensured that they had all the equipment, including tasers. There was no reason for that young man to be shot in his back. He should have been tased if he needed to be arrested and apprehended. But we have so many failed opportunities. We are Black people arrested and put in prison at a higher rate than any other rate.
Well, thank you so much, both of you. I'm afraid we're right out of time.